are allowed
record.
to.
Okay, it's really
Yeah.
funny how these things work. It's like Zoom is all about like hierarchy and stuff, right? Like you have this permission
Yeah,
and such.
yeah, exactly. Because you're paying. So, yeah,
Yeah.
basically, yeah, yeah. Um, you want to do a little intro?
I don't know. Oh, by the way, it's another like important thing. Like, is it like, are we gonna like upload this online, like to make it public, or just keep it private? I mean, either way is fine with me. It's just like, the way I do it with Jorge is like we call and we just put everything uploaded because I mean, it's not like we decided to make it public, but it's more like we didn't have anything to hide. So let's see what happens if we just make it public. That's
Yeah, but maybe you just tell me where you're going to publish it just to understand the context. Yeah,
right. I mean, it's going to be on my
yeah.
YouTube channel, and
Ah, yeah,
like
yeah.
you know with the what I was doing, what I've been doing with Jorge. It's just you have like I will get like maybe 5 views per video, so I don't know if
That's
anyone's
not true.
watching.
In your YouTube channel, you have more than 5 views.
No, it's clear. Like if I post like like Hydra tutorials, I get like quite some views. But if it's me just chatting with Jorge, it's like 3 people, 5 people watching it, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, right now I don't have any objection to have it public. I might
Yeah.
get wild and talk shit, so then I might change my mind. But no, no, no.
Yeah, we can decide. Let me know if it doesn't work.
Sure, sure.
We can retract it
Okay.
later, but that's
Okay.
okay. Then I'll just post it. Um, and yeah, I don't know if I need like a intro. I mean, the idea already, and also like what I do with Jorge, we just do it like casual so that we just chat and we don't really make anything formal for the viewers or anything. But yeah, basically like I just wanted to like yeah, talk further about my project because last time it wasn't enough time, obviously. At take more care. But by the way, thanks for organizing that um monthly
Sure,
meetup
sure.
because that's really like helpful.
Yeah, I think it would be even better if we had more of a, traffic, more exchange, so that you're not getting
I think it
feedback always.
depends. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, small groups is like sometimes good. I mean, maybe it depends on, what people want and if someone wants more feedback, but more people doesn't mean like or more feedback, right? I mean,
No, that's exactly. I just meant more, not necessarily in a one group, but that, because not everyone is coming every time. So if someone has a rhythm of every third time, that in between there's also other people, so that there's yeah, just a change in constellation, who's giving you feedback, right? So that you could meet more people. But I think we're also planning with Valerie to do some, yeah, shake up where to uh advertise, where to post it, who can join, and
mm,
so on. It's time to rethink a bit, but we're also super happy, like also for the group we had last time. It's very, yeah, it's super stimulating. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Yeah, this is also like something I should start thinking like to make up some kind of meetup. I mean, that's how Jorge and I started like during pandemic, basically about
Mm.
that was like a really general idea. Like if anyone's interested in dance and technology, let's meet online and talk. And there was no format at all. And I think Jorge and another person joined and we were just chatting like random stuff and trying out some video feedback and that
Yeah.
became the project with him. But yeah, I think it would be nice to have maybe like something more structured for like my project about this online platform, just to have
Mm.
like ideas of, yeah, just hear from people what they're interested in
Yeah.
and what they want. Also, it can be like a user, like if once I have the platform, it can be like a meetup for the user group. I don't know, it sounds a bit like technical, not for dancers. I don't know. But this is the gap, right? Because I want to like have something online, have something, like technical, like it could be open. I mean, it will be open source, but the people I'm reaching out is dancers. So it's like a very different dynamics, like than, if I'm making tool for like musicians, like electronic musicians, probably like it's quite easy to think about having meetup and people joining online and, having like some kind of forum. I mean, forum is actually what I'm trying to make in a way. It's like online platform. I never thought about the word forum, but I mean, this whole like vocabulary problem as well. Like if I say it's a online forum for dancers, like the way they perceive is probably like different. And if I say like something like Instagram for dancers, probably that sounds more approachable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have to like formulate what this is about, and yeah, start designing what the platform is, like what kind of features they need, basically.
Mm.
So the idea for the research, I was talking with my supervisor yesterday, was to conduct some interviews with the real users like you and see what the needs are, what they want. But then that means I have to structure interview questions.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, I think you also develop that through interviews, although of course it makes sense that you see how it goes. I was just thinking, since you're so, you know, um, tech equipped and crafty, maybe it would be also interesting to have interviews that propose like a parallel activity, so that either you make notes together in some board or something that you immediately see them, and also like if that's going to be a video, then that you have something visualized for audience. I think that's for sure one of the reasons why not many people like stick to just a conversation. um,
mm,
to at least, even when you let go of the conversation a bit, you're still stuck with one part of the notes or something, or people also like to take pictures of it, or like depending what the tool is, and then also where you can drop references if it's not just in the chat. Let's say that it's not just written. Not that I'm fond of drawing, but so I don't know why I'm suggesting this. It's probably just thinking what would work. I had many things now to say. Yeah, I think two things. First, I wanted to propose to maybe that you look at the book. It's called Toward a Lexicon of Usership. Um,
okay.
yeah, I don't know the author actually. Or it's not, I'm not sure if it's an author, maybe it's like yeah, editor of multiple, I'm not even sure, yeah, if it's multiple authors writing it or not, but it's kind of redefining how you engage with art, whether you think of it as like, yeah.
Word lexicon of usership, Stephen Wright.
Yeah,
I think it's this one. Yeah.
let me check if I can, yeah. I think that would be very interesting book, and that kind of redefines what kind of community you're addressing or building. uh yeah, what is used, because basically it does need to have a function that you said, someone who's a user, like if I'm a user, um and sorry, now I'm all over the place, but something that we said in the Take More Care meeting, which was interesting and interests me already for a while without being actively researching it, is making parallels between open source communities and dance communities, and never quite understanding, or not never quite understanding, trying to understand, yeah, what could be, what is open source within dance, or there are so many other similarities, I think, that or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's more my desire that there would be some kind of an open source between dancers. Because as you said, like even Take More Care has problems to take off, because we're not used to basically commenting on each other's work, right?
Hmm.
Which I don't think that's what Take More Care does. You're commenting on each other's methods or working principles. We're not like,
Right.
yeah, and I think that's within the dance community, especially, gets really quickly confused.
Interesting.
Maybe because of the nature of the art form, because whatever you're doing, it's already you, and that's also the kind of um, the object created that you're judging, maybe, or it's like, yeah, I think it's very weird to people are maybe not literal in dance sense, that when you see someone perform something physically, you could think of it as a draft, right? You take it in its totality as it is. You're not like, oh yeah, that's going to be really amazing when it's like properly done. And you're not, no, this person is doing it with full on what they have going on right now. So
Hmm.
I think that's an interesting uh, yeah, line of thought of like full blown or basically prototype in dance, if you want it like that. Um, and I guess that's very closely then related to taking notes or making notes within dance or choreographic practice, although it's also, I think it should also be distinguished. Um, Not that they shouldn't fit together, but are you addressing dancers to make notes or choreographers? I think there is quite a difference of who is doing what. Not always, depends on the working hierarchy maybe, or organization. If I think, yeah, yesterday we spoke with Jorge, and we were saying that I think he was trying to make a parallel between an artist and a designer, or artist and an engineer. So who's taking care of the matter, the material, and who's taking care of the structure, which I think it really depends on one's own individual way. But then, yeah, it's really this like how I'm not sure how dancers are capturing the material. I'm not like actively creating movement material anymore.
Hmm.
That I would need to keep it in time, like that. I'm like, I'm creating a phrase, right? Because when you do that, I think they usually just record themselves. Um, what the use of that is also questionable, because I don't think it always reflects what you were doing. So I'm interested in this like parallel cues when you're creating a dance phrase that you can't get from the video, you know? So it's all the
Hmm.
like extra para things. If and that's the most interesting part. It comes usually out when you're trying to transmit that knowledge. That's why I think I'm interested in pedagogy of dance in general, or in, yeah, in arts, because that's usually when you start clarifying or articulating your own method, because you need to convey it to someone else. You usually don't do it for yourself. um Now I got, yeah, so you can
So
also,
actually, like this, like interesting question, like you said about, choreographers versus dancers,
yeah.
because that's something I think I should be clear, like who is the target. And in the proposal, I try to like blur it or like not to specify too much, and I just use the word dance maker. I don't know if that's like a good word or not, because it's something that like it's like nowhere, because if I say it's for choreographers, then it's kind of excluding dancers, because there are dancers who's making dance as well, but are they choreographer? Maybe. I don't know. And I don't want to like get into like this discussion of like who's a dancer and who's a choreographer. Not necessarily. I mean, it could be something I mean, maybe it's something I have to address at one point. I don't know what you think about this.
No, I think saying dance maker is a great mask. It's truly, it's including everyone, because it's also, I think, are you a dancer? Are you a performer? Are you a mover? Are you a co-creator? Are you a choreographer? Some people just do research, and then other people are interpreting the dance and so on. And I think has a lot more to do with economic aspect of how dance production is organized. And with that, of course, also authorship and I don't know, carrying the responsibility and visibility, I guess. But I think saying dance maker makes sense because people who are making dance from whichever aspect will recognize themselves or will want to recognize themselves. And I think it also allows kind of self-determination, because you could be, you know, a dancer in a company with a very clear, like, I don't know, in whatever national ballet of, or like not national ballet, but like a ballet company in some uh, um, uh, region of Germany, and you have very little saying in what you have to do. That's also my stereotype about it. And some contact with them confirms it. But for instance, and they do have their own aspirations, or even once a year they do their own work, and it's like, yes, they're dance makers, right? Even they're making dance happen for someone else. Maybe it's not theirs, or
Mm,
maybe it is. Maybe the choreographer's approach is that it's like which I guess was like early 2000, like or maybe a bit later, trend of like dancers would create the material. There's not anymore like being given down from the choreographer and then you need to practice it. They're actually producing, and then choreographer would organize it, right? So with that also comes a question: what should the documentation be part of? Is it helping me store it, understand it, organize it within it, transmit it to someone? Should it be legible for someone else or not? um yeah, what would be the interest? And I think that's something that's very hard to admit in dance communities, how you get inspired from each other, because it's immediately, oh, someone took my idea, right? Or I've heard that many times, like yeah, and I've seen they did the same thing I did in a completely other context, you know. Oh, okay. So this, yeah, ambition to be seen as innovative or bringing something new in, and if you stay on top of that, then that will secure you more funding for the future and so on. So this whole structure reflects more, yeah, fears and basically how precarious the whole
mm,
field is. And I think I don't know if you're interested in that, but I think you will have to like dig in deeper how that relates to what is even possible to document in dance because of that, right?
yeah,
Like if you think of like foresight, right? Let me tell you my experience with foresight. I came to Frankfurt.
please.
Yeah, I was big on improvisation. I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. With, of course, you know, I had some technical knowledge from before. It wasn't like you have people who just enter improvisation as movers and they don't have like a training in a technique, which is also, yeah, a valid thing. And then getting in touch with improvisational, what is it? Improvisational technology, his thing. So this is maybe a moment that I wouldn't want to have it publicly there, but I will say it anyway. When I saw that, I'm like, for me, that was just a normal evolution in an interest of a dancer, how to develop themselves. It wasn't like, oh my God, you can mimic geometric forms. I'm like, yes, we've been doing that. Like, you know, I don't know, for one of the tasks for the master program I did in Frankfurt, I developed, I don't know, my own system in what I'm doing. How are you improvising? Is it like inner rooted or outer? Am I taking impulse from outside or inside? And how to, I was interested in that categorization, but I couldn't understand the hype. Like, wow, he was the first one to do this. I'm like, he just branded something that belongs to all of us that we're doing. Okay, fine. But you know, and he had I don't know, great uh, media artists that could visualize that.
Right. So
Of
he can
course,
just draw lines in the space.
yeah. So, and that was, I mean, now I see it differently. I mean, of course, I've been brainwashed also to make a signature in something, and that's my product or whatever. But back then, it really offended me that someone would uh, take the liberty to claim that it's his. I mean that yeah, that he would claim that it's his work basically, but it's something that is like be part of the cognate field of dance. This is what we're producing together. And um, what I also didn't see, it wasn't like really systematized. It wasn't like a system that he came up. It was just, you can do this and this and this. I'm like, yes, so many possibilities. Um, I mean, I really hate it when people think they're doing something else when something is a whatever combination of something you've seen already before. It's like, yes, okay. That's not a new principle. It's just like putting B before A. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, it's
so
like a bit like a tech showcase. Like, we have this
yeah,
new product but
yeah,
like it's nothing really surprising, but just making a hype of, now it
yeah,
has more, I don't know, capacity, or it's like like Apple website now, like how the new iPhone is, how great it is compared to the last one.
yeah. And also, but I think that's generally also something to do with academia, and we did it we kind of refer to it with Valerie in the lecture performance, which is yeah, how do you give credit to your um, so people that came before you? And is it
Yeah.
even possible to express something without referring to where you got it? Because it feels like as if you're not, I mean, where where do they intersect? Of course, the knowledge I have is built upon the network of us building it all together. But I'm also, whatever new idea I have, I'm not claiming, and this is my invention. I'm not like taking steps to make it even legally recognized. I'm just like, oh, I had this idea. And they're like, no, you didn't. Someone else had it before you. I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I've never heard of this, but they've just popped up at the same time." So anyway, um,
But what do you mean, like, so like in your lecture performance, I remember it was like quite explicit, like, you had this reference from, other artists, researchers, like showing some videos, or you had this kind of Zoom meeting type of
yeah.
collage. And so, but that's not meant to be like explicit about you're taking ideas from this person, that person, but or like you mean like to kind of inter, or like how to say, like woven into your performance, like the whole references are
It was
part of the performance.
yeah, it was, I mean, yeah, that there's one part where it's just like name dropping or going through references and constructing a sentence from other people's sentences. Uh, which, by the way, reminds me of a great project of a New Zealand artist that I think for 3 years she only spoke in quotes. Um, yeah, yeah. There's even an interview, Danielle Freakley. I always suggest that because it's great and it's amazing. And yeah, what is even, I don't know, original thought, and you're always using words that have already been used. So, but anyway, my point is more, yeah, the question of legacy, which needs to be firm also because it was such a um, weak field for a very long time before it established itself as autonomous, I think. So especially in like pedagogical realm, it's like I remember having huge discussions within my own program. Like, if you teach, do you have to say every single time where you got an idea for every exercise to kind of pay respect to, and I think it's also a value set. Sometimes that is solved by, hey, I've been dancing for Hofe Schechter for, I don't know, 10 years, so it's clear where I got my things from, which is also not necessarily true, right? So I think if you don't kind of follow the lineage of who was being taught by who, then that can get kind of obscured, and then there's only one name that comes from early 2000s or something, and it's like everything I know is from this person. It's like, yeah, but they got it from somewhere else. So where do
Right.
you kind of cut this line of saying, well, and I think that it has a lot to do, of course, with why or how we're not, or we are willing to share material, or what is it that we can exchange freely or admittedly, right? um I don't know, like at some point, sorry, allow me just a short story. I was part of the conference in Düsseldorf. I think it was called Digital Natives. Was it Digital Natives? I'm not sure if that was the name of it, but anyway, I think it was just before Corona. And we had to come up with, yeah, it was a bit of a horrible context because they put us at work for them to think for them with the excuse,
Oh,
oh, we want to know what the field needs. I'm like, the field needs to be paid. You're just giving me a nice hotel. But anyway, um, so at some point we had an idea with few people, what would be possible to do for solidarity of the people is that, for instance, in your own piece, you include a solo as a, like music industry has this, you know, you have a pre-band, right? Someone who's going to warm up the audience. It's like, why wouldn't you
right.
share your space and say, I give you 5 minutes before we start, you can do your solo. Or you include someone else's work with properly crediting them, like if you feel they're doing something that corresponds, whatever, aesthetically, or you know, anything that interests you, and it's like, this solo will be included. Why do you need to? And it can be just included, right? Does it need to seem seamless? What would be that kind of a patch up or work? And of course, very few people were interested in that, because no, it kind of like harms the sanctity of their artwork. And I understand all that, but I think that could also change.
Right.
So again, how do you treat someone else's material? How easy do you feel you can use it or not, which is happening anyway all the time. So a lot of words to say that it's a question, what would what would motivate someone to use a documentation tool for more than to surpass your own needs? What would be shared? What would be the open points? What would be the open source part, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I see it, or have like ideas from like different angles. And well, one thing is like I see a lot of like parallel with the dance and open source in a way that, or open, or maybe like a media art, because they, a lot of artists just take someone's tools and just, you know, put their name badge on it and sell it as if they invented this whole tool. I mean, this was like quite obvious when this AI deep learning happened. You know, some artists with more technical knowledge, they jumped on that bandwagon, and as if they invented this AI model, and they put a bit of flavor. I mean, you know, I have some respect to people who started this, you know, kind of, let's say, pioneers in deep learning and machine, well, and art, because, you know, there was not many resources available online in terms of
mm,
tools and tutorials. Nowadays, I think it's quite easy. You know, you can just download something and upload your data, and somehow you can train it on your own. But back then, you know, a few years ago, maybe like 2018, around that time, like people started doing this, you know, I have respect in that sense of like adding, you know, technical knowledge and reframe it into their work. But at the same time, they didn't invent the model. Like there is like whole research and open source tools available from Google or whatever, and that made this deep dream and all these things possible. So, and that's like a kind of extreme example, but like everyone uses open source tools to some degree. So that's something we can't like avoid in media art, but nobody really like credit everything unless you're properly open sourcing your tool, maybe you need to credit what tools are used in this program. But if you're just publishing as a media artwork at the exhibition, then you wouldn't credit what open source tools are included. But why not? I started to see that it could be interesting. Like if I make web, let's say like web artworks, like web pages or net art, I would say I try to credit like where I got inspiration. Also, like if it's using Hydra, what kind of framework it's using. Just it's more of information for people who's curious about how it's being done, and I don't really like see that as something I want to keep it for myself. But it would be nice if there's like a standardized way. I mean, okay, like GitHub is kind of something that you could use in software development or media art even to credit or to see a bit of connection to other people's works. But I think that's probably not enough. Um, yeah, and then when it comes to dance, I guess it's yeah, like it has to be, it could be, but like you said, it could be explicit in the work. You're taking this idea from this person, and but how do you frame it? And then I had another point that is like, so I'm making this online journal remixable platform, but what if this becomes part of a performance, so that someone just starts dancing or whatever, performing, and then you have the projection of this platform and you pick someone's idea and you perform that, for example. I mean, that's like quite explicit, but yeah, I'm just thinking like, how can it be like brought back to the performance, not just as a backstage tool, or more, well, not really backstage, it's like in studio tool
Yeah.
to the performance.
Well, I think in a very poor sense, Instagram is kind of a documentation tool, because I think especially during the pandemic, a lot of dancers went on there to continue dancing, basically, right? And also it was a big deal of like doing this exquisite corpse thing where everybody does a part of a movement and then you have like 30 videos and there's one movement that continues, right? That was like so annoying. But I understand it makes you feel like, oh, we're still here, we're still important because we were the first one to get cut. But what I find interesting about Instagram is that it gives space to people who don't have institutional support, right? They still have
Yeah.
visibility in a way, and a lot of power in how they curate it. And that's then the thing. There you have everything open. So I bet, or that's what I hear from people around, and also while I was still doing it also for theaters, is like you just have collection of like reels that belong to dance and theater, and this one to da 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 da, or I don't know, one I have, it's called movement delicacies, because I just find it amazing what I see, and it's usually not coming from dance, but anyway. And I think that's a sort, I mean, that's not, that's your practice being documented as you're doing it, not your practice of research, let's say. So it's also, I'm curious if you tell me more, what would you imagine that the documentation tool does, right? Like remembering, I think it was also Foresight's project, and you for sure know it, where you could annotate the video and make comments and things like that, right? Like, I find that funny, and that it shows why it got overdriven and not really then used. I mean, it's also a question when it comes out, it be commercialized and if it can work. I don't think it can work if it's just for dancers. I think people need to be able to appropriate it for something else, because only dancers, like, then they will use some tool that is already there, just like Instagram or something that you can use for other things, but then you realize I can use it for this. Yeah. Or if a non-dancer could use it for something. I mean, it's a question if it's that specialized or not, because then it would should really like get into the niche of like dancers really need this, and but what is it then that they really need, right? But for instance, I think the problem with tools like I don't even remember the name of that support site one. He was using that, I assume.
Peacemaker for
Yeah,
Motion Bank.
it's like I don't believe that people like we already don't look at the pictures that we're taking. I mean, I do I do it like once a month. I'm like, okay, delete, delete. This goes into this collection. Sometimes I print some out, whatever. But people don't go through like 3 hours of rehearsals and going, yeah, and this here and this there and this there, you know. Like
Right.
nowadays, you don't even record something for 3 hours unless it's a durational performance that you need to prove to someone you did it. You do small snapshots of also nobody is collecting accidental moments of a performance in order to, ah, yeah, this is it. I don't think so. This is already done on internet, I think. That you're interested, or you're interested in a specific performer that you know what they usually produce or what's the movement quality or something. So this sitting down and writing, I think it's more something that needs to be on the go, that you could do it on your phone even,
Right.
because that's how you work in the studio. And that is still present for sure. You make most performances or dances in the studio. So there's always like something is going to be done in a big open space and then on the side where I can sit down and do something, right? I don't believe that many people sit at home at their desk and then go and analyze and you have people who also do that, but then they will use anything, that's useful. So if it's something that's useful for more people, it's like I think it needs to be much more literally mobile. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess only ones who's doing like reviewing hour of performance is Jorge and me.
Yeah.
Actually, we were doing it. Um, but I think just to give a maybe background of this project Peacemaker from Motion Bank is I think they designed it for annotation, like for research purpose specifically. So it's
Hmm.
not for dancers themselves or
Okay. Yeah.
even for choreographers, but like someone who's studying Foresight piece
Okay.
would use that platform to annotate. Actually, they often work with researchers who are not dancing in the piece, but like specifically hired to annotate. And that's actually like a really like exhaustive process because they also have interview videos and so on, like any kind of material like related to the performance. And they somehow try to like make a link connection between this part of the performance is mentioned in this interview video and it's related to this, I don't know, book
Yeah.
or article. So obviously that's not what I'm aiming for. Like what you said, just taking short videos, photos with a phone and somehow just upload it and that's it. That's something I would see. um yeah, something I would like to no, I'm more like towards that direction. And what else? Yeah, I think it's a good point, like to make it not just for dancers, especially like when it comes to like remixing ideas. I need a lot of data, like people uploading data, right? It's not like two people using the platform, then it doesn't really make sense. I mean, it could be, something between two people like remixing each other's content, but I think it's more interesting if there's like a lot of content from people from different background practices.
But
And yeah.
that's a question if you want to, for instance, I think there are kind of two for now, two approaches that I see for sharing, right? To be open, which is you can ask people to do that and then they won't use it. Uh, if the primary goal is that you will share it and see someone else's, I'm not sure if that will be motivational enough, but I think if it's really useful to you and the condition is that you share it, that's another thing, right? You're like, You can upload your pictures and use them and but they need to be open for others to see what kind of examples you did. And you're like, yeah, okay. And then you're up for that. But if you don't see the direct use of that, then you're, yeah, I'm not so sure. So I thought more, I'm curious what you think of, what is it that you think you would like, or a dancer would like to, or you as a dancer as well, would like to document? Because or yeah, documenting sounds then as a, I think it's a kind of a mature term. You come to documentation once you realize either that your memory is not that good, or you need a proof of something, or it's like I have a lot of ideas and I always need to come back to it to remix it, right? So there's always like this, I'll come back to it later. Or is it documenting a certain process to for self-reflection, that you come back and you're like, oh, I'm recognizing what I'm doing. I always do this. I take two completely separate things and I put them together, whatever, right? But it's another thing if it's like documentation for purposes of giving you a future impulse. So I'll tell you, I had this idea in 2019 and I applied for, what was it? This big funding in Germany. Um, I forgot what it was. It was quite big, and I don't know it now.
I don't know.
There were like 3 rounds. Anyway, I wanted to work with someone who would, yeah, have much more technical skill to help me make an app where you would do 30 seconds of a well, if this goes public now, someone might do it. So please contact me. Let's do it together.
Business plan,
Yeah.
business idea.
So you record 30 seconds of some movement or something, or I don't know, it can be longer, right? And then the output is that the app identifies in percentages of where do you come from as a technical background to say, this is 30% Martha Graham, and this is da 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 da, and this is coming, which was the idea to actually deal with dance history, the canons, who is deciding what a canon is, and also a notion of a signature move, which I think is horrible, but that's why I also didn't then push for it. It was more like, oh, I want to do a workshop where we're pretending we're going to do this project, just to open up the discussion of like, do we want to reduce dance to a signature move, right? Like, I don't know, a big like arching or something is usually finally Martha Graham, or I don't know, how do you recognize Merce Cunningham or so forth? Who else do you include in this? So then you get whatever move is recognized, or also urban dances. It's like you have 30% of this, 20% of this. I think for a while, for people who are also not confused, but maybe they're like, oh, really? I have this movement vocabulary in me, right? And it's a nice way of like conveying dance history. But what I thought could be interesting for this case, for a sort of a documentation, is that I run my videos through, let's say, a program that will, I don't know by what logic, give me back associations and inspirations. That is based on people's notes, that could just do, read this book, and this is the artwork that goes really well, or this is a complete opposite, so that there's some kind of principle behind how basically what we're doing in Take More Care, where I'm like, I'm listening to someone, I can take their questions seriously and answer them, or I can just think a bit more loosely and go, oh, this reminds me of this other work that I've seen, or they have solved it like this, or in music it's da da da. But that I think is like, it can be, well, I think if it's done on a very like superficial level, in the sense that it doesn't go super deep, can have probably same results as if it goes really deep, because people will take it and interpret it as they want. So
But this is like interesting question, like how accurate do you want?
yeah,
And it doesn't have to be, right? It can be just like even just showing random inspiration of the
yeah,
day that
yeah,
is already helpful. And I had another like conversation with the dancer friend that, like I said remixing, but what if it's something yeah, like people would like reinterpret in any way. It doesn't have to be, if for example it specifies certain moves, you get inspiration from the note or the video or whatever, and you can just do in a completely different way, and that's completely fine in terms of like dance making. It's not about software development, which is more like direct in terms of like referencing. So, like you said, it can be just like completely random, but somehow, well, not random, but somehow like related in some way. That's already interesting to have this, suggestion feature. But again, the question is like how to get all this, how to gather the data.
Yeah.
Is it from some people's actual users' notes, or like should I feed the system already with notes from, I don't know, whatever source that's available online?
Well, if I think maybe for a beginning, it's good that you have people that you ask, hey, are you willing to that? I don't know, this is maybe sounds weird, but maybe that establishes a sort of dynamic that is like, if you feed it, you can use it, you
Right.
know, at the,
Oh, I see.
yeah.
That's like a condition to use. So it's not like you upload and it's going to be shared, but you share so you can upload your content. I mean, it's the same thing, but yeah, so that's a condition to use the tool, basically.
I mean, to start filling it up, yeah. Or at the beginning, of course, probably you just have to find a lot of people who will do that. Or I don't know if it makes sense to do it with open public archives of like past, and I don't know if many people except maybe Laban have their notes, right, available, or someone that was documenting their dance and choreographic practice. Um, yeah.
But the catch is that it's going to be credited. So that's something like I have to be clear about it, right? So it's not like people can just take your idea and use it as if they invented. But if you give the data to the platform, it's going to be credited properly, at least on the platform, so that you see where the idea is coming from, not just the idea.
Yeah, I guess there's also kind of like a level of transparency, probably what you want to share if something is a new idea or you're sharing just like because now we're also assuming that it's if you share your notes that it's clear what the idea is, right? Which is not always the case or at all.
Mm.
So does the user author need to articulate what the idea is, or you're just sharing your notes? Because sometimes you see someone's notes and you're super inspired, and for them was just like, I don't know, documenting something that they don't know how to use, right?
Mm.
So yeah, there's quite a network of things to think through what to take out. Yeah. Like I've just been to Georges Pompidou Center. And I've seen the notebooks of Vera Molnar, the
Mm.
Hungarian French artist, and they have, at least in two cases, or like kind of exponat, I don't know, they have probably like 15 of her notebooks of her sketches. And her particular ones, and I was more interested in that than actually then in the final work, where it's nice. It's like also like you have it there for comparison. Um, in her notebooks, she was only putting in like more, it is an idea, but it's already, and this is what will get rescaled bigger. That's what she plans to do. Maybe it was also the curation because I couldn't go through the notebook, right? So people also like curators chose the ones that you can then see, some of them not. But it wasn't really tryouts. You could not see like, oh, she's
Mm.
trying something, and then sooner or later it will develop into something. It was more like, I have the idea for whatever this commissioned work on, whatever one was on wind or something, and it's already, there's a drawing there, and then it's like more or less replicated in live version with wool and nails in the wall and so on. So that's also a question of what you document, right? And I think, and if you're used to, so for different types of users, like when I make notes for different things, I can drive myself crazy because I have like personal notes, then I have work notes, then it's reading notes, then it's just ideas. And for a very long time, I was trying to keep different notebooks for that. I liked writing. Then I was like, oh no, I need to digitalize it. And it's very cool to just have different files. But it's also kind of more work to then add a picture or something. For a while, I had this little
Mm.
printer where you just like stick it in the notebook. Then I stopped doing that and I put it all in one notebook, but just had keywords that I could then recognize and highlight with a certain color or just a idea to do, blah, blah, Um, and when it comes to creation, then it's usually, okay, this notebook is just for this project, right? And a lot of like illegible writing. Uh, then I started like copying it into, of course, a file, even sharing that, not even, but sharing that also with dancers, having a common file to put in. So it's so many different ways, yeah. But another question that I have for you is are you interested in capturing a particular thing? So for instance, not everyone works very verbally, right? So they just gather pictures, and that already has a certain flipper pathway of hitting the right spot. Uh, I'm used to writing everything down and articulating because I also like to then write. But sometimes is it like, for sure, many times I come to a point where I'm like, I know exactly how it should look like, what the feeling is, or this is create something that I'm not able to articulate, but I need to do it more often and develop it. So how do you capture that? And you usually do it non-verbally, I would say, or it's one
Mm.
keyword that captures it for you. Um,
So that's something like I want to ask around, but I'm sure everyone has different practice, and
yeah.
I feel that I have to like really limit it to certain modality, let's say, and think text would be the easiest to work with because then, yeah, like going through the text in a systematic fashion with a, somehow using the program, that would be easy way for the implementation, also for the storage and everything. I think that's the easiest. And yet I think I can find people who like potential users basically, even if it's just with the text. Um, that's like how like I'm kind of feeling right now. But if I talk to people and everyone says I need images, I need videos, I don't know if there's a lot of people who's using videos, but like maybe short videos, but something that have to be justified through interviews. Yeah, but I think like targeting like small population would make sense at first, or like including like not just like you said, not just dancers, but not writers, but who are actually working with text, but not writing a book or articles. Not like, is there like a text artist? I don't know how this is called.
There are tax artists. No, but yeah, or maybe another, like, to flip the question around would be not to actually do it and offer it, but just for as a thinking tool, of course. Who would be the target group that would use a similar tool, but not for performance purposes? And what would then the difference be? Like, for instance, you have a lot of like, there's a spread of corrective or healthy movement online, or especially on Instagram, which is kind of like biomechanics, right? And there's a lot of like clips of recording a sports person or a patient, depending if you're violating the rights or not. And they're like, what do you see is wrong here? And then, you know, there's these assumptions for learning purposes. Ah, yeah, there's not enough of rotation of the left hip. The left shoulder is sunk down. So there must be something on the spine, blah, blah, blah. So, uh, you know, these people are also making documentation, or they're making their own tools. So it's like having short clips. There needs to be references of what I see and what I can write about it. So annotating it in a way. So just to think, and then I don't know, there's a book or condition or something they need to connect it to that. I'm just trying to think of another situation where you are doing kind of similar things, but not for same purposes. It's not same. It's not a creation process. It is. They are creating an archive of conditions, exercises, because they are developing exercises then for these people, right? If you want more open hips, do this and that, right? So I'm just trying to think what would be a similar situation and how to kind of study it. So then you're like, ah, I definitely don't want to go there. I definitely don't want to do this, so that it encloses what is it that really matters for the dance practitioners. What I'm trying to say is that maybe you will even get more information from non-dancers, how they use it for movement purposes and what they're doing with it, than how dancers would or should use it. Because I think maybe it's not specific to dance. Maybe it's more specific to movement. That it's like a wider lens that you need to look at how to make this than just dancers. It's just like whoever is dealing with movement, right? And then capturing this need could potentially give you more information. Because I think if you go too deep on the scale of like dancers or dance makers, you are going to first be confronted exactly with these differences. Oh, I prefer to work with text. I prefer to do this. It's like, yeah, great, you prefer, but what are you actually using and what are the needs, if we're talking about the needs? And I think that doesn't come from these like, you know, myriad of individual approaches, because finally we're all using mostly Instagram, right?
Mm.
And another thing that I think is interesting to think is how to embody or incorporate in what you're planning to develop the parts that are now done offline. Right? Can you cover that? Maybe that's where the key is. So for instance, you have I'm using Instagram, and then I have a little printer, and then I have a notebook. So it's like 3 physical objects, let's say, that I need to use to get to this. Or it's like, I'm just like recording a voice message to myself, and then I need to put it in the file, and then I just let it go through Otter AI, and I have it transcribed. And, you know, but these transfers from one to the other to the third one, is that losing time? Is that something you should kind of address, or and that's where the key is of how to make something better? Or is that inevitable part that you have it distributed around and not really in one place? Does it really speed up the process or make it better or easier? But then based on what? Yeah. But I've just realized that what I'm telling you now is like I keep being split between uh, a documentation process and not addressing so much, but what does sharing it mean, right? Like there are 2 different topics here. How do you document? What do you document? What do you need it for? And why would you share it? What would you share? How would the exchange happen? Is there exchange? So this, I don't think they're separate basically, but for like the ease of thinking, I'm separating them, because it's also how I document things, of course, influence what the sociability is around sharing this, or if I'm willing to share
Right.
it, or right. Yeah.
Because it has the reader or viewer or so on if you document something. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
I
and
mean,
Sorry,
Yep.
and I think it has like it's a great way also to that we started from take more care or any kind of like also what you do with Hogehead, like upload things. I think that's something we should actually discuss with Valerie and think of like why not record certain sessions where people are willing to, so you get a taste and a feel of what that is, right? And then
Mm,
what is this like you said, thank you for doing this, and it's like yes, at certain moment it's really tough to keep going and show up even if it's just one participant. But what we do is that if there's no one, we have a conversation because it's like a long-term conversation. So in a way, documentation is very similar. Either you have long-term conversation with yourself, and then the question is, well, how do you want to invite other conversationalists into it? Like, do you want to do it sporadically as we are? Like sometimes it's three, sometimes it's no one, then it's six, then it's no one, no one, no one, one, you know? Uh, yeah, how do you kind of reconcile with having different timing? What do you then chip in? What will go out if it's going out? Because I think what we're building together in the Take More Care when we're sharing is basically for sure a sense of community. You get to know more people, and um, as you said before, it doesn't need to be more people because there's continuity. Someone hears about my project for the fifth time, so they will know it better, or you know. Um,
mm,
so this whole community dynamic of what to do with the documentation, I don't think it's like, yeah, solve one first and the other, but it's like, how do they um, meet? Where do they get intertwined? How do they condition each other?
right.
If you think about it in the terms of take more care, what are people willing to share, right? Um,
Or why
I,
people show up, actually. That's
yeah,
another
yeah,
question.
yeah, exactly. That would be interesting to know what the motivation is. It's like, oh, it's interesting, it's useful, it's useful. It's useful because we just generally don't have a culture of commenting on each other's process or displaying it. Then it's useful because by conveying it to someone else, you hear yourself. It's a kind of a sounding board. You actually get references and new ideas that are inaccessible to you because you either lack certain knowledge or experience or whatever. So I think these are all the reasons why sharing something, or yeah. And I don't think it's anyone um or I would say people who show up, that's my now really like ad hoc analysis. People who show up are people who are also quite systematic about their own practice, which might come from the fact that they're, very seriously getting funding, so they need to be like this.
Mm.
That's why it's not many dancers that come and share, right? Um,
Oh, I see.
yeah, also there might be, this is just a pure speculation, that it's like not feeling really the responsibility towards the process they're in. So it's like, yeah, I do, but that's the person that will decide. Um, and also because there's no need maybe to articulate. I don't think that the need to articulate your own process always comes very naturally, right? It comes when you're like,
Mm.
write a report because we gave you 5,000 euros. How did you use it? Um, but I mean,
Right.
the project you're doing, you said, yeah, I would go for one modality. You also have a chance and a power now to uh, encourage or support a particular modality you think would be useful, It's one thing to go for to create a need in the sense of like, no, 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 let's get more articulate. Let's just use text. Okay. Then again, how do you balance between the fact that we're just mostly visually based as culture right now? Or I don't know if you have any plans of like introducing or connecting to schools. You also have basically the influence there to say, uh, am I in touch with, pedagogues who see the lack of this, and they part of their curriculum is to support blah, blah, blah. And this is where my tool can come in. And that also depends on your business plan, because I think a lot of such tools can be very short-lived, but that doesn't mean they're not effective. They can do, I think, huge contribution to one or two generations of a certain program. And then you will have people who will spread this idea that this is important, even if they stopped using the tool, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Or it can be a tool that will catch on, latch on, people will misuse it for other purposes and so on, which great as well, no?
Totally.
Yeah. So
Okay, yeah, I have like a lot of more questions, but I think we should close now and
yeah, sure.
we talk soon again, and
Yeah, would be great.
I'll come up with like different questions or
Yeah, also sorry
whatever.
for being just like I did not expect myself to be so chatty, but I guess I'm
That's great.
okay.
Okay, thanks so much, and have a nice day.
You too.
Ciao,
Ciao, ciao.
ciao.